In my last Helluva Boss video, I talked about how frustrating it is for me to have to rely on supplementary material to get basic world building questions answered. I want to try to find a balance here to genuinely enjoy this show for what it is, but also ask questions because I get a lot of my enjoyment from picking a show apart. And when you have to piece stuff together from supplementary material, it does open the door to a lot of fan theories and discussions, which is admittedly what makes most fandoms of any show fun. Hell, a lot of YouTubers make content based on fan theories of shows and games exclusively, and that's how a lot of analysts like myself started, because of fan theories. There's nothing wrong with fan theories, but when said fans have to fill in the holes for a show because this show doesn't, that's why I have to ask, is the fandom itself writing this show for Vivzy? That's always up for debate, but after watching episode 5 of season 2, I feel like I've had the rug pulled from underneath me. More questions, more plot threads, and more confusion. When a show gives too much exposition, or becomes over-bloated with too many plot lines, or doesn't give enough exposition, as is the case with Helluva Boss, it can cause pacing problems when telling a coherent story. True, the show has relatable characters going through very real issues, but to me that's not enough to carry a show. Emotionally speaking, I can fully understand why people get so attached and invested in this show. Helluva Boss's strengths lie in its animation and art style, as well as its relatable characters. The emotional drive behind this show is incredibly intoxicating and addictive. We genuinely care about these characters and what happens to them because in spite of being supernatural creatures existing in hell, they all feel very human and are all going through or working through issues most of us can relate to in some shape or form. The biggest weakness is the world building, as I said before. To want this to be fixed with one episode though is an incredibly unfair expectation. But what I definitely didn't see coming was this episode was going to throw something into this world that would shake the entire point of IMP and by extension the point of the show itself, and that's the Asmodean crystals, or at least that's what the fans are calling them. The entire premise of Helluva Boss is based on what IMP does as a company, immediate murder professionals. In the pilot, Blitz says that thanks to their special access to the living world, they can take care of your unfinished business for you when you were alive.
Well, luckily for you, thanks to our company's special access to the living world, we can help you take care of your unfinished business by taking out anyone who screwed you over when you were alive.
But in this episode, we see Blitz enter the human world without using the grimoire Stolas gave him, or rather, Blitz stole from Stolas, and uses a crystal instead. So much for that special access to the living world, huh? And with the introduction of these crystals, that allows anyone from hell to go to the living world, imps or demons alike. Yeah, that's a big assumption to make here. In Helluva Boss, demons are humans that died and went to hell, so would they be able to use one of these crystals to get back to the living world? And if so, could they also obtain a human disguise and therefore essentially resurrect themselves? Now do you see how problematic the introduction of these crystals are, regardless of how rare or easy they are to obtain? To me, it kind of ruins the very point of IMP and by extension the show itself, because this also makes the arrangement between Blitz and Stolas completely moot, and this was the backbone for Helluva Boss.
My book, Blitzy. The book I was given to do my job, that I have allowed you to use to do yours.
It also brings up the question as to why Octavia didn't seek out one of these crystals instead of going to IMP to steal the book. She could have just as easily either stolen one of these crystals or even purchased one if they are so common, as it's implied, since Barbie needs to use one of these to do her job. That would mean that these are not only commonplace but are probably mass-produced. But again, this is also an unfair assumption. Just because Barbie has a wearable crystal that allows her to enter the human world, that doesn't necessarily mean that these are as numerous as, say, mobile phones are or smartwatches are. But the fact that episode 5 doesn't really have any of the characters comment on these crystals at all makes me think that yes, these are commonplace. But then we do have that close-up of Blitz when he sees the crystal for the first time. The crystal is literally reflected in his eyes at this point, implying that this is a coveted item to him. If these crystals existed this entire time, IMP's access to the living world is no longer special. Why would Blitz try to steal Stolas' grimoire when these crystals exist? Wouldn't it have been easier to just steal one of these crystals instead? And if these crystals are so commonplace, Stolas wouldn't have been able to blackmail Blitz into the arrangement they have between them either. Stolas could either have obtained a crystal and given it to Blitz to get the book back, or the crystals could be used as a possibility to give Blitz an out, either by Stolas giving him a crystal or by Blitz obtaining a crystal and then giving Stolas the book back because he no longer needs it. These crystals have thrown a huge spanner into the works of how this show operates, and I'm really not sure how this show is going to get out of this. I mean, it's starting to feel like a fanfic of itself at this point, if that makes any sense. It seems certain jobs within Hell supply these crystals to employees, as we see with Barbie's job. So that would mean not only are these crystals commonplace, they're used in everyday use for employment. This would probably also mean that other assassins that exist in Hell, as I mentioned previously, would also be able to have access to the living world because of these crystals. So yet again, IMP as a company has just become completely moot at this point. It's never explained in the show what these crystals actually are. Fans have theorized a lot based on a split second of seeing something about Asmodean crystals in one of Stolas' books, but the show itself never tells us what these crystals actually do, or that these crystals and these are the same ones. There's also a split second when we see a message on Stolas' phone about a deal that's going down at Aussie's, and people have taken that to mean that Stolas is somehow going to get an Asmodean crystal to give to Blitz to get them out of this arrangement. And yeah, that is a good theory and is probably what is going to eventually happen, but if you don't take the fan theories into consideration and only take on board what the show has actually given us, you're pulling a lot of stuff out of thin air here, guys. Not only that, but with the introduction of Blitz's twin sister, who we only know exists because of posters in the background and photos we see when he's scrolling through his phone, and from a throwaway insult from Verosika in episode 3 of season 1.
Rehab is for sad loser wash-ups, so your sister says hi.
Blitz shows deep concern for his sister and wants to help her and reconnect with her, which is absolutely admirable, but Barbie wants nothing to do with Blitz.
Barb, wait. I want to help you. Let me help you, please.
I never want to see you, ever!
But she's never been mentioned before, so Blitz's determination to find his sister feels like it came out of nowhere here, and what else came out of nowhere is that Barbie has a human form. Which raises even more questions the fans are so quick to answer, but I prefer not to rely on fan theories and instead look at what the show gives us.
First things first, if we're gonna do this the old-fashioned way, we're gonna need disguises.
Blitz literally asks Stolas in episode 2 of season 2 if he could conjure up human disguises for them when they're in the human world looking for Octavia.
No chance you can conjure us a couple of those, can you?
Sadly, no.
All three of the imps are surprised that Luna has a human disguise in season 1 episode 3, and Luna can't believe that the imps don't have human disguises.
Well, I can blend in with humans easy enough.
Do you have a human disguise?
Yeah, don't you? You three have been screwing around on Earth this whole time without human disguises?
It's never really stated that they need human disguises to enter the human world, and I am yet to see any consequences on themselves or the humans when they are seen by humans, other than obviously the humans usually ending up dead. Moxie is even praised for his so-called demon costume in episode 2 of season 2.
Sick demon costume, man!
The only time they do face the consequences in season 1 episode 6, when Moxie and Blitz are taken hostage by, in Stolas' words, demon-obsessed lunatics, but then later says that they're a bunch of kooks that no one takes seriously, so again, there's no real consequence.
Remember, we can't be seen.
Really, Blitz? Are you sure about that? Because that's never been a concern of yours before this episode or after.
They are definitely from hell. They must use this dark magic to cross over into our world.
How the did you get caught by humans? Are you little creatures not being careful up here? You know, if you get in trouble, I get in trouble. We don't want that. Luckily for you, most don't believe the word of the demon-obsessed lunatics. They are seen as kooks.
We finally got the evidence we needed to be taken seriously. Nobody in corporate is ignoring this.
So I don't understand why there's so much emphasis on the fact that the imps don't have human forms or that they need human forms, but yet the show itself shows no consequence for them not having them. I mean, in episode 5 alone, Moxie and Millie not only are seen by humans, but are also pretending to be humans without any disguise whatsoever, and are somehow able to hide their tails and their horns, and are also gender bent, and are pretending to be siblings, and later have sex on stage in front of minors. Did I forget to mention how gross I think this show is? But I'm Ace, so what do I know? But the Moxie and Millie plot in this episode deserves its own video entirely. So let's get back to the topic at hand here. All we know from the show so far when it comes to who can have human forms is that Hellhounds have them and Succubus have them. Luna has a human form, which we see in season 1 episode 3. Luna asks the imps why they don't have human disguises, and they never answer this question. So this would either mean she learned the spell from the book and assumed the imps did too, or she already had a human form and just figured the imps had one as well for going to the living world. But that wouldn't explain how Vortex also has a human form. He doesn't have access to the grimoire. So I made the assumption that this is just something that Hellhounds can naturally do, since Luna doesn't need to use a crystal or a device or the grimoire to do this. The Succubus are also not wearing any crystals or devices, so I'm assuming once again they also have the natural unique ability to enter the living world. But again, the show does nothing to explain this. The fans do the explaining, and as fun as that is for the fandom to do, I don't really like how the fan theories have become accepted as canon to explain away the very real problems this show has when it comes to its writing and its poor pacing. But again, it's still a fun show, and I do look forward to when new episodes come up. What do you guys think about the crystals? Do you think that this makes the arrangement between Blitz and Stolas entirely moot? Why do you think Barbie has a human form? Let me know in the comments below. I'm Mad Munchkin. Stay creative.